In the early summer of 1942, a great shadow stretched across the vast blue Pacific. It was a shadow of fear, cast by the rising sun of the Japanese Empire. Only 6 months had passed since the devastating attack on Pearl Harbor, and in that short time, Japan seemed unstoppable. They swept through Southeast Asia and the Pacific Islands with stunning speed and brutal efficiency. Now their gaze was fixed on a tiny atoll called Midway. For the United States, still reeling and on the defensive, the stakes could not have been higher. If Midway fell, the path to Hawaii would be open, and the American West Coast would be threatened. The Japanese plan, orchestrated by Admiral Isoroku Yamamoto, was a masterpiece of naval strategy, designed to be the final crushing blow. Lure the American carriers to Midway and annihilate them with more carriers, more battleships, and more experienced pilots. Deep in a windowless basement in Hawaii, far from shipyards and airfields, a different kind of war was being fought. It was a war of minds, patterns, patience. It was waged by a small, brilliant team of American codebreakers led by Commander Joseph Rochefort. For months they worked to decipher JN-25, the Japanese Navy's main operational code, a painstaking puzzle with thousands of missing pieces. Piece by piece, they read fragments of secret messages, seeing the outline of a major operation, target codename AF. Rochefort suspected AF was Midway, but a hunch wasn't enough to risk the Pacific Fleet. They devised a clever ruse. Midway would report a failed freshwater plant in plain English. Soon, an intercepted Japanese report confirmed it. AF was short on fresh water. AF was Midway. The trap was real, and now the Americans knew exactly where and when it would be sprung. With the enemy's plans laid bare, the burden of action fell upon Admiral Chester Nimitz, a calm, thoughtful leader. Japan brought 4 heavy carriers, the very ones that struck Pearl Harbor. Nimitz had 3. 1, the Yorktown, badly damaged. Experts said 3 months. Nimitz gave them 3 days. Patch her enough to fight. Thousands swarmed the carrier, patching the hull, reinforcing the deck, rewiring her systems without rest. Yorktown sailed with repair crews still at work, giving Nimitz the 3rd carrier he desperately needed. Trusting Rochefort over Washington skeptics, Nimitz hid his carriers where Japanese scouts were least likely to look. Let the enemy strike Midway first and commit their planes, then strike while they refueled and rearmed, requiring perfect timing, luck, and nerves of steel. It was a lonely gamble, sending a smaller fleet against a superior force on the strength of a decoded secret. The morning of June 4, 1942, dawned clear and bright. As Japanese planes roared toward Midway, American carriers answered the call to action. Many barely out of their teens climbed into cramped cockpits. They were about to fly into history. The first to launch were slow, low-flying torpedo bombers, facing terrible odds for a single torpedo run. Men like Ensign George Gay of Torpedo Squadron 8 knew survival was unlikely, yet pressed in. Without fighter cover, the swift Zeros tore into them. Of 41 torpedo bombers, only a handful returned. Torpedo 8 was wiped out. George Gay survived, a lone witness to the carnage. Their sacrifice drew enemy fighters down, and every gunner's attention away from the skies above the carriers. Amid rearming and refueling on Akagi, Kaga, Soryu, and Hiryu, the carriers were at their most vulnerable. Just as the torpedo attacks faltered, American dive bombers appeared as if from nowhere. Led by Wade McCluskey, low on fuel after following a lone destroyer, they found the Japanese carriers exposed. The moment the torpedo pilots had died for had arrived. McCluskey and Dick Best screamed down from 15,000 feet through a storm of flak. Enterprise pilots struck Kaga. Best's bombs slammed into Akagi. Fuel and ordnance ignited in massive detonations. Yorktown pilots hit Soryu. In about 7 minutes, 3 frontline carriers became blazing wrecks. Fire and smoke billowed as crews leapt for their lives. The aura of invincibility shattered. The pilots, shaken and elated, climbed out. They had done it. The tide of the Pacific War turned in less time than it takes to boil an egg. The 4th carrier, Hiryu, escaped the initial blows and struck Yorktown with bombs and torpedoes. Her crew fought bravely, but the damage was too severe. Eventually, they abandoned ship. Later, American planes found Hiryu and left her a burning hulk. By day's end, all 4 of Japan's frontline carriers were gone, along with hundreds of aircraft. Most importantly, they lost the core of their experienced naval aviators, irreplaceable veterans. America could build new ships and train new pilots. Japan could not. Victory was tempered by grief. Many sailors and pilots did not return. Families on both sides received letters that changed their lives forever. After Midway, Japan shifted to the defensive. The United States seized the initiative and began island hopping. The Battle of Midway stands as one of the most decisive moments in modern history. It proved the aircraft carrier, not the battleship, was the new queen of the seas. It showed that signals intelligence can decide wars as surely as guns and bombs. Codebreakers who worked in secret, workers who rebuilt ships overnight, leaders who made lonely decisions. Above all, the young pilots, Torpedo Squadron 8's sacrifice, McCluskey's instinct, Dick Best's precision. Ordinary people doing extraordinary things. From today's piece, Midway reminds us, be prepared, value intelligence, act with courage when it matters. Freedom is defended at great cost. We owe a debt to those who paid it. In the end, Midway did more than sink 4 carriers. It pushed back the shadow of fear and secured the road home.